Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Martha and my channel is Preparing for Retirement, and I'm coming to you from our hotel in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and I do plan on doing a series of videos about our time in Chiang Mai as we go on. But the purpose of this video today was to talk about the repositioning cruise that we took from the United States, Florida to be specific, to Rome, Civitavecchia, Italy, and how that experience was on the Celebrity Constellation. So let's talk about the cruise. It left April 12th, and there were several stops along the way. We stopped in the Bahamas, and then several more sea days. And then we stopped again in Gibraltar, in Cartagena, and then in Barcelona before we finally got off the ship in Civitavecchia. So it was a pretty long cruise. It was, I think, 16 nights. So we arrived on the 28th of April. We then spent a few days in Rome, and I'll have a review coming on the hotel there in Rome that we loved. But anyway, this is about the cruise. So we actually wanted to take this repositioning cruise to test out this method of transportation for us to be able to get from, the North American continent to Asia and back, or to Australia, to give us more options. We have family in Australia. Our grandkids are in Australia, and for the plan that we have, the retirement slow travel that we're planning on doing, this if you fly to these places, they are very long flights, and then you add in if you have to make stops along the way, and it can be very, very long trip. So to give some perspective here, we did take a flight recently to Australia, and we started in Orlando, Florida, and by the time that we got to the airport, the area that my daughter lives in, which is a bit outside of Sydney, so you have to end with a domestic flight within Australia, it was about 35 hours of travel time. And you're crossing, I think it's 15 time zones along the way. So, as you get older, we've found that it was much easier to do it maybe, 6-7 years ago. And it was never really easy, but it didn't take quite as much of a toll on our body as it did, last year. And we've started to both get sick when we do it, because it's just, between not sleeping and really long, trip, and all the different time zone changes, and then of course all the germs that are there on the planes, recirculating in the air. We just wanted to see if maybe repositioning cruises would be a good option for us. So I have to say, we really enjoyed this cruise. Just being able to take each day and, relax, and your food's provided for you, and the cabin is cleaned for you. And, all you have to think about really is what you're going to do for that day. The whole concept of it, and then changing time, at most 1 hour every couple of days was fantastic. It wasn't hard on your body at all. And, you get the chance to meet new people, and you're going to be going to shows and have entertainment. So, I think for us, this will be a reasonable mode of travel, at least once in a while. Excuse me. And in fact, I have gone ahead and booked a repositioning cruise back from from Asia to the United States for the spring of 2026 to get back and to help with my mom. So, this will be a way for us to go forward. Now, whether we'll do it every single time, I don't know. We may try to combine it with flights from Europe. A flight from Europe to the United States to the East Coast can be as little as, 6-7 hours. We'll see. But definitely, I think for the longer flights to the complete other side of the world, and, as an aside, Australia is not just the other side of the world, it's also the other hemisphere. So it's about as far as you can go from one place to another to go from the United States to Australia. Anyway, so we've determined that we believe that this will work for us as another mode of transportation that may be a little bit kinder to us as we get older. So all that said, we accomplished our purpose, which was to test it out. Now let's talk about the cruise itself. So we sailed on the Celebrity Constellation, and the Constellation is an older ship. I think it's the Millennium class. There are 4 ships, I think, that are still in the water in that class for Celebrity. And, I felt like it was a really good size ship for us. So we're not looking for the huge ship experience with the water slides and the rock climbing walls and all the excitement. We're kind of not in that stage of our life, and we're not traveling with kids. So this cruise, we already knew going into it that with it being a repositioning cruise, and so it was a longer cruise, and then B, that it wasn't one of the flashy, newer, larger ships. We already knew that there weren't going to be hardly any kids on it, and that those entertainment options were not going to be available to us, and we were fine with that already. So, when you book an older ship like that, that's a slightly smaller ship, you kind of, you're going into it with your eyes open that I'm not going to have a big water park. Now, having said that, we felt that there was plenty for us to do, and there were new shows. It seemed like every day you could go to a different show. The entertainment was excellent. They had several bands there long term. I want to say that in the smaller venue, they had probably 4 or 5 different bands, and they played throughout the day at different times. So you'd have someone playing on the Lido deck, where the pool was. You'd have someone else playing in one of the bar venues, and then you'd have someone else playing in one of the other bar venues. And so there was always live entertainment for you to go see. And then, of course, they had the Celebrity Theater, which during our stay, they had a Broadway-type production. They had several headliners that were excellent, by the way. And then they had a magician. They had a comic. There were a lot of shows. We saw several shows. And we really enjoyed them all. They also had a guest lecturer on that had a lecture, I think, almost every day. And he was a renowned scuba diver and explorer, and he had several talks. Now, I only got to see one talk because I was working during this cruise, and he tended to have his lectures in the mornings, so I didn't get to see many of them. Lou did go to one of them, and then our friends that we met on the cruise, they went to every single one, and they said he was really good. So they really offered a lot of entertainment. I felt, considering that, the majority of the cruises, they're sea days. And so, it's difficult for them to fly in new acts and, fly out the old and, all that. People had to stay on board the ship. But the bands that they got, the musical talent that they got for the venues, I felt was excellent. I kind of went into this with the feeling that maybe the entertainment would be kind of so-so, or maybe it'd be sort of substandard because it wasn't a flashy new ship, but we felt it was really good. So I really enjoyed it. So we felt the entertainment was very good. And the cruise had activities every single day. The crew had activities every single day. So there was always something to do if you wanted to do it. They had trivia, they had bingo, they had all sorts of, charades, and there were board games set up in a specific area. I think it was the top floor of the main dining hall every single day. So, there was just tons to do. And people would just set up, they brought a lot of cards. They were apparently cruising with friends. So, you would have these big card games going at any place. It would be in the solarium or out on the pool deck or, in any of the lounges. There were several. I'm going to put up here, wherever it goes, the video of my tour through the Constellation. So there was definitely plenty to do. And, we never really felt bored. And quite honestly, especially since I was working full-time during this cruise, it was okay for us to have a down day, to just hang out in the cabin or maybe up in the retreat, the rooftop terrace up on the 12th floor, which again, in that tour video, you'll be able to see that was really nice to hang out there. Oh, and they played a movie up at the rooftop terrace. They had a giant screen TV, and they played a movie every single day. They had everything from Moana to I think they did Twister, and I don't know what else. I didn't watch any of the movies, but there were people up there watching it. So, all right, so there was plenty to do on this. So I thought the entertainment was really good. I don't want to rate it because I don't have a lot to compare it to, but I was very pleased. So the crew was fabulous. I can't say this enough. You didn't go anywhere that someone wasn't smiling at you and, asking how you were doing and telling you to have a great day and, seeing if they could help you. Our cabin steward, his name was Joseph, and he was absolutely wonderful. He already knew our names when we first arrived. He never failed to call us by our names, which I thought was pretty impressive, given the number of cabins that he has. And he was just on it. He was absolutely on it. He was wonderful. Always smiling at us, always pleasant. Got us whatever we needed. I thought he was excellent. So, I made sure to call him out when I did the survey afterwards, because he was just fabulous. But I felt that way all the way around. When you're going through the buffet, when you're going through dinner, people are just really nice. The crew was just really nice. I can't think of one person that, didn't smile as you walk by, or, I don't know how else to describe it, but it gives you an atmosphere that, you're welcomed and they're happy you're there. And, you didn't feel like you were an inconvenience to anyone. You didn't feel like maybe you were asking too much. We had a couple of occasions where wait staff, for example, they went out of their way to get us something that wasn't even in their area. So one of these was at the Tuscan Grill, which is another video that I'll have linked below. My review of the Tuscan Grill versus Le Petit Chef, the two specialty restaurants that we went to on this cruise. So we were at the Tuscan Grill, and my husband had a nice bottle of wine that he had purchased that he'd only had half the bottle, and they were holding onto it for him in the main dining room. And so we were eating at the Tuscan Grill, and we were ordering, and he thought, that wine would be really good with the ribeye that he had ordered at the Tuscan Grill. And so the sommelier said, well, I'll go get that for you. That's not a problem. And so the sommelier went all the way down to the main dining room, got his bottle, and brought it up. And so he was able to drink that wine that we'd already purchased with his meal, which I felt was going above and beyond. It was like, I don't know, 6 or 7 decks down. And, they were responsible for many tables, not just ours. And so, I felt like that was really great. And then at another time, we were in one of the bars there, one of the venues, and listening to a live band, and everybody was having a drink, and I just kind of wanted an iced coffee. And so someone said something when the waiter was right nearby, and they said, "Oh, I'll go to Cafe Al Baccio and get you an iced coffee." And I was just kind of blown away, because they had to go down like 5 floors to go get me an iced coffee and then bring it back up to my table. And I was just kind of, I was impressed. I was like, thank you. I never would have thought to ask for them to do that, but that's a service that they provided with a smile and didn't even think anything of it. So, again, for the crew, for the staff there, we were just so impressed. I thought it was just great. It was very, very nice, and I would highly recommend that crew. The ship itself, I felt, was in very good condition. I think it was reconditioned maybe, I don't know, a year or 2 ago. And we did notice that the entire time we were on the ship that, they would be painting this rail, or, doing this or doing that. So there was constant upkeep being done while we were on the ship. It was very well labeled. If there was going to be wet paint, they made sure to, so that people weren't ending up, ruining their clothing or whatever by leaning up against it. They made sure that it was blocked off, and, so they were really taking care of it. I saw people out first thing in the morning up in the, grill area, just scrubbing everything and keeping everything very clean. I thought the ship was in great condition, and I thought that they really worked hard to keep it that way. Let's see. If I had something to complain about, it would probably be that, because the ship is from, I think, the early 90s, they were missing lots of plugs throughout the room. So, for example, beside the bed, there were no plugs to, recharge your phone near the bed. So you really just had the one set of plugs over by the desk area. And there weren't any that were dedicated to HDMI cables. And again, that's because it's a 1990s ship, I'm sure. We brought my, I'm actually using it right now, so I can't show you, but we brought the unit that actually provides, multiple conversions depending on where you are in the world, and it has 4 spots on the top for different HDMI cables. So we just plugged that in, and all it meant was that we had to, bring our phone over and plug it in, before we went to sleep. So it wasn't that big of an inconvenience. I did try to work from the computer area, the eye lounge, and now that was difficult. So I think that has a lot of room for improvement. One gentleman was able to, in the tables where they have like the power strip in the center of the computer table, and you just kind of lift up the flap and you can plug in your computer right there in the center of the table. It was only European plugs. They didn't have anything for the North American plug. So I didn't bring my converter with me to that area. I felt like it would have already been plumbed for that, or wired for that, whatever you say. And it wasn't. So I was able to work at one of the tables until my power went low, and then I had to actually turn around, and there was one place where a printer was plugged in that there was one single plug available for me to plug in my computer. So that was really awkward, because then I had my back to the room, and the nature of the work I do, I can't have people behind me. So I ended up kind of sitting in a chair, kind of twisted this way, and my cord was going behind me it just wasn't ideal. So after that, I just decided just to work from the room. So, that area, I think, maybe next time they update it, if they can update the wiring a little bit, that would be fabulous. So, there's a criticism. The food. We felt the food was very good. It was very good in the buffet. They had a theme every meal, and we saw everything from Montenegro themes to Asian nights to United States or American night to buffet night to just everything under the sun. Mexican night. But there was always a good selection, and they always had the carvery, which had someone stationed there and slicing meat off of the bone. And so I saw pork there, I saw roast beef there, we had prime rib, we had just everything under the sea. I think one of the nights was Cajun night, so they had excuse me, they had quite the selection of what you could eat. There was always Indian food on offer, and it was very good. The Indian food was very good on the buffet. And we did find out towards the end of the cruise that the executive chef was Indian. So I guess that makes sense. But they had, Indian food for breakfast even available. It was very good. And sometimes I would walk around the buffet, and I'm not a big, I eat very carefully, let's put it that way. And so I really like different cuisines. I like fresh whole foods and things like that. And so some days nothing kind of caught me, but the Indian food was always there. And so I always enjoyed that. I did that several times. But the fresh fruit was fantastic. I always started my morning with fresh fruit. It was wonderful. They had decent coffee. I think the brand is Lavazzo. It's an an Italian coffee, and it's really good. And I felt like that was pretty decent. Now the cafe al baccio, the paid coffees, the specialty coffees, those were excellent. I had my favorite order there, a pistachio coffee with one pump only, so it wasn't too sweet, just had a little edge of the flavor. That was excellent. That became my, after the port visit, single iced coffee that I would get. And the only complaint that I would have would be their cakes were a little bit dry. They would cut the cakes. You would see these little bitty squares of cakes when you go up to I'll try to drop some pictures here of the dessert area of the buffet. I felt the cakes were dry. I did get a couple of the vegan cake offerings, and those were more moist than the regular cakes. So that was a bit of a disappointment. Even my favorite, which was German chocolate cake that they had on the German themed meal, it was saved by the fact that there was quite a bit of frosting, so it wasn't as dry as it could have been. But I felt like it could have been better. Now, the pie was always reliable. The pie was good. The cookies were good. Some of the other pastries I felt were very good, but the cakes kind of lagged. So, the main dining room food I felt was very good. The specialty restaurant food, we were very impressed with that. We felt like that was excellent. So overall, the food was very good. So let's talk about like the flow of, embarking, disembarking, both for the cruise itself and then also for the ports of call. I felt like the communication with the crew was excellent. I felt like the details given were exactly what people needed. And it was very, very well organized. They kept it flowing. There wasn't pandemonium. The other cruise we had was just complete chaos. It was not pleasant getting on or getting off. With Celebrity, it was very easy. They kept the line moving. They were very polite. They would meet you coming back from your port of call with a cold, wet towel, some fruit water, and get you back on the ship very easily. Communication was so clear. It was so clear, so well done. They had signs up in the elevator, what floor you were going to be disembarking on for that day. They assigned you a time that you were to leave the ship. Now, We did pay for the Premier service, which meant that we got to get on with priority luggage if you were going to check your luggage which we didn't. But that had a lot of perks to it. But one of them was the priority embarking and disembarking, and it was so well done. I mean, we were off that ship in, I don't know, 3 minutes. It was so fast. It was so fast. They just told us to go to the Rendezvous Lounge, I think it was, and it was with all the retreat, suite customers and all that. So it was a priority disembark, and I think we were off the ship in, no joke, 3 minutes. It was so fast. Once you start disembarking, you're out. It was just so organized, and the Italian authorities had all of our information. So we really just had to present our passports, and we were through. It was so fast. So to sum it up, the Constellation, I would definitely sail on that ship again. My husband feels the same way. We felt like it was a great experience. It was reasonably priced for what you got. And, we are the demographic I think that they're looking for. Slightly older, with it being a repositioning cruise, no kids. Although they did have things for kids to do. But with it being a repositioning cruise, I think we saw a few teenagers, maybe a couple of children. We really didn't see very many. So I would highly recommend this itinerary. Again, it's from Tampa, Florida to Civitavecchia, or Rome, Italy. And we just really had a great time. So highly recommend. So in the next few videos, I'll be going over our time in Rome. We had a couple of days in Rome. I'll go over some of the port days that we did in Spain. And then we're starting our Thailand series. We're going to be here in Thailand for a month currently, in Chiang Mai specifically. And we'll go over a little bit of what's going on with our day. And I'll give an update on our life and how it's unfolding and how retirement will be coming sooner than you think. So if you like this content, I'd ask you to please like and subscribe. And other than that, have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.